Hello friends, how are you all doing? My name is Shaz, short for Shahrazad, and I love colorful makeup. Today we're going to do something super exciting. I'm going to show you 19 palettes that I want to use during the winter. These palettes have wintry colors and they just remind me of winter, and I want to just show them to you to inspire you to also bring out those wintry palettes and start using them. And then I'm going to show you the 20th palette, which is my favorite Christmas palette of all times. Unfortunately, friends, this palette is no longer available, but this is a palette that's so close to my heart. I love it. So if all of that sounds good to you, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Now let's go into the video. Stack of palettes in front of me. These are going to be palettes that I think are suitable for the winter season. I have used some requirements in picking these palettes. I have put the requirements in the description box below just in case you're interested to know. These palettes are randomly arranged. There's no ranking here. But let's go through this list. Before I go through it though, let me tell you that I did this eye look with Fire and Ice palette from Nomad Cosmetics, which is going to be our first palette. I did this eye look in a to buy or not to buy video, and I will tag it here just in case you're curious to see how I created the look. Do I even need to say why this palette is a wintry palette? I mean, the name of the palette is Fire and Ice, folks. All the cool tones plus the fire tones, it's just so wintry. To me, a winter appropriate palette is a palette that is usually at some level cool toned. If I open the palette and it gives me those chill feelings of winter, I consider it a wintry palette. I do also have some palettes that are a little bit maybe considered fall grunge that I like to also use in winter, so that is another thing that I've considered. But this palette, this is a winter palette. Blue is a cool tone, so palettes that have a lot of blues are generally considered wintry palettes to me. I was actually very pleasantly surprised with the quality of this palette. I also reviewed the Fête de Provence palette from Nomad in this channel, which is a palette that came out over the summer, and the mattes just didn't work for me. But this palette had great quality mattes. I'm impressed. The next palette I want to talk to you about is Gal on Moon from Gloss Gods. Another palette that I have used in to buy or not to buys. I might have used it in other videos as well. So it's definitely been featured in this channel in the past. Again, cool tones, friends. When I look at this palette, the green shifts, the blues, a lot of these are teal blues. Teals to blues are cool tones. And this one that you see as you might see red or dark brown. This is actually a black based multichrome, which is sort of a gold to green to red. Let me see if I can capture more shifts of it. Maybe you can't see that, but I think you can see the other shifts in the other colors, which is great. This is definitely a palette that I'm looking forward to using during the winter season. Also, friends, for my lips, I used this color called Ricco by Stila. I think a lot of people associate dark lipsticks mostly with fall, but I use dark lipsticks in winter as well, particularly dark burgundies like this or dark browns, usually with a very cool eye look, which is what I do over winter time. It sort of balances out the look because it brings either a lot more coolness depending on the color, or it brings warmth to the look. Going to our next palette, friends, and the palette that I'm going to talk about I think is the smallest palette I've ever used. Last time I had some 9 pans, but I never had a palette smaller than that, and this one is going to be a 6-pan palette. This palette is definitely a winter palette, which is why I wanted to talk about it, and that is this one by Kaleidos. Friends, I actually don't know what the name of this palette is. I'll put the name under the screen. The combination of colors in this palette is all cool tones. These are colors I love to wear in the winter. These 3 colors are 3 colors that scream winter to me. Teals, cool toned burgundies, and cool toned pinks. Even the black, I don't think you all can see, but the black has some glitters in it. But this palette screams winter to me. I'm just trying to think, what other season could this be? This is definitely not fall, definitely not spring, definitely not summer. So this is winter. The next thing I want to talk about is by Norvina. This is a tiny 9 pan that they came out with 3 or 4 years ago. And friends, this is an absolute winter palette. Other than the pressed glitter, it's all cool toned, absolute wintry palette. I don't know if I talked about this next palette during any of these videos where I talked about palettes of the season, but this palette could possibly be featured in other seasons as well. Follow Your Dreams palette from Saints, Angels, and Sinners. Friends, to me this palette kind of fall, kind of winter. All the teal colors, and then you have cool toned burgundy kind of colors. And then you have pinks, very cool toned pinks. I definitely think this palette is one of those versatile palettes that can sort of be fall grunge kind of, and then winter. I love this color down here. I don't know if you can see it. It's one of those very wet looking duochromes, and similarly this one. Again, a wet looking duochrome. So I'm so looking forward to jumping into this palette. Friends, my next palette is again a large palette from Cara Beauty. This palette's called Ride the Wave. I think it was supposed to be Ride the Wave. Maybe it means something that I just don't know. So this palette is all teals and blues and silvers, and I mean, if this palette is not winter, I don't know what is. I think I don't even need to explain anymore. I don't know why this palette came out in the summer, because this is fully wintry. I bought this palette this past summer, so I'm looking forward to using it this winter because it hasn't gotten a lot of use. Friends, you know that Sugar Drizzle is one of my favorite brands. I really like their palettes. And this next palette from Sugar Drizzle, to me, is a very winter vibes palette, and I'm looking forward to using it this upcoming winter, and that is Man, I Love Frogs. I have never used this palette because I just received it before going on a trip, and I haven't had a chance to dig into it or doing anything with it. But just look at the cool tones. All the cool teals and greens and blues and pinks. It's all winter vibes. This gray to lavender is such a beautiful color, and that is one of those wintry colors that I absolutely love. Time for me to start using it. And the next palette, friends, I already have a video up on this channel about, and that is Sorcerer from Fantasy Cosmetica. I don't think I need to explain why this is a winter palette. I mean, we have teal, we have cool toned everywhere, we have blue, we have pink, we have all kinds of colors that are very cool toned and very, very wintry vibes. So definitely a winter palette. Particularly these kinds of duochromes that shift between two cool tones, friends. I love using those during the winter. Another palette, and I think this palette is still available, is by Adept Cosmetics, and that is Smitten in Switzerland. I have the old packaging. I know they've repackaged. Switzerland just in general reminds me of mountains and snow and winter and Alps, you know? So these cool tones, even the colors that are neutral, are colors that I will use during the winter. I have gotten a good bit of love out of this palette in the past couple of years, but now that I'm looking at it, I have some new ideas, and I'm definitely going to bring it out and use it a little more. Another thing, friends, is that I love when brands do a very winter vibes palette, and then they put a single or a couple of very colorful, very warm looking tones in the palette so that you can just warm up the look, similar to the look that I just have on. That is even more winter to me, because it's like, oh, you have snow and cold, and then you have fire. The next palette I'm going to talk about is by Adept, and that is the Ninhydrin palette. This is the old version. I bought it at launch. Friends, I think you can already see the cool tones. This palette is totally ideal for winter. Look at that. I don't think I need to say more. You can just see how this is a wintry palette. I do have a video of this. I don't know if it's up on my channel yet, but I'll put it up. Friends, the next palette that I want to talk about is by Glamlight, and that is their Ice Cream Dream palette. I know when you say ice cream, the last thing people think about is winter. It could be because I purchased this palette in January, February, and I use it a lot during winter. And then the other thing is that generally during winters, I like to wear pastel colors. I either use very deep colors like my lip color or use pastel colors, which is part of the reason why this kind of a look is a winter look to me. And friends, the next palette for me is this beauty, Dark Magic by Beauty Bay. And I know a lot of you might say, well, this is fall grunge. I don't know if I classify this as fall grunge. This is way too cool toned to be fall grunge. I feel like fall grunge needs some mustards and some pumpkin colors. This to me is just too cool toned. I mean, literally all colors. Maybe this is the only warm toned color, or maybe this, not really. I mean, this palette is almost 100% cool toned. So if I want to go jewel toned in winter, this would be the type of palette I would use. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting more use out of this palette this winter. I do have a video reviewing this palette on my channel, and I have swatches and eye looks and everything with it. I'll tag it for you. But this is a fantastic palette, and I love Beauty Bay. Friends, the next palette I want to talk about is actually not a new palette. This palette came out, I think, towards the end of 2020, but it's still available and it's being restocked by its brand, and that is Juvia's Place's Wahala 2 palette. Maybe just looking at the inside, you can imagine why this is a winter palette. I mean, it's literally winter colors, as I was just describing. Silvers and whites, cool toned purples and blues and teals, and then you have some warmer tones. Again, I said you have cool snow, ice, cool vegetation, and then you have fire, and then you have some lights, pinks, purple, corals. And this color down here is one of those gold to magenta multichromes. I don't know if you can see that. It's a beautiful color. And this palette goes on sale frequently because it's not a new palette. I really like it. I highly recommend it if it is your kind of colors. Friends, the next palette I want to talk about, I might have ranked also for the fall, and that is Dawn of Fall palette by Adept Cosmetics. I know they were phasing this palette out. Maybe it's already phased out and no longer available. I actually don't know. If you remove this brown background, you can see how cool toned these colors are. I think these two colors are the only warm toned. Everything else is kind of cool toned, and they all remind me of fall winter time. There's no rule for whether a palette is a fall palette or not. A lot of it is about just the artistic feel, and this is a pretty versatile palette that I could see be used in winter as well as in the fall. This color, for example, from my angle is very cool toned blue. I think you guys see light teal or light green. The rest of the colors are also either very cool toned, like that one is a teal, this one is a blue. These are just dark reds and purples. And this one, I don't know what color you all see, but I see dark brown from this angle. And then this one is one of those charcoals with a hint of blue. But then you have the fire colors. I'm looking forward to getting more use out of it this winter. If you're wondering about eye looks and performance of this palette, I have used it in past to buy or not to buy videos. So the next palette I want to talk about, friends, is Ace Beauty's Oceanic palette. This palette literally is the epitome of winter colors. I mean, teals and blues and greens and cool tones, similar to the Fire and Ice palette that we looked at from Nomad. This is a beautiful palette, friends, and Ace Beauty has a very good matte quality, which is part of the reason I buy Ace Beauty palettes, so that I can complement it and use it in conjunction with palettes that are all shimmer, like for example Dawn of Fall or MILF palette that I just showed, and so on. Friends, I can't continue without mentioning Riviera palette from Anastasia of Beverly Hills. Now, a lot of you might say this is actually not a winter palette and that this is, I don't know, a spring palette, but look at the colors. I definitely see winter in this palette. I mean, if you remove this gold, it's teals and purples and cool tone pinks, a couple of corals, but mostly cool toned. And this color, which is one of those silvers that has a dab of lavender, I just love. Friends, we're approaching the end, but I'm gonna do something a little bit controversial, and I'm gonna go into another palette that I also talked about in my fall video, and that is the beloved Serenity palette from Cosmic Brushes. Let's take a look at this palette before we ask why. There are a lot of cool tones, friends, in this palette, separate from the fact that this palette has just fantastic quality and I don't want to stop using it. So I'm trying to find excuses to use it more during the winter. Look at the colors. Don't you see winter in these colors? Removing these 3 colors from here, it is a very cool tone palette, friends, which is part of the reason why, and maybe removing that as well. I think even the mustard colors are cool toned. So please don't judge me when I say I'm definitely going to use this palette during winter. This is one of those palettes that everybody's been raving about for very good reason. It's a fantastic palette. It's been on sale for Black Friday and it keeps coming back. So if this is something you're wondering about, you can check out my video and see. And the next palette that I want to talk about came out recently, but I feel like I can't talk about winter palettes without talking about this palette, and that is Cosmic Wanderer from Terra Moons. Again, all cool tones. What else can I say? Yeah. And friends, last but not least, this is a palette that ironically came out this past summer that I recently purchased during the Black Friday sale and I just received. And this palette to me has a lot of wintry colors, and that is Fairy Tale Fairies palette from Simply Posh Cosmetics. Just look at these colors. Mostly cool tones. You have all the teals and the pinks and kind of pastel colors. As I said, to me that can be winter, particularly cool pastels. And then you have some greens, but then again, still cool tone greens. The proportion of blue is more than yellow in these greens. And then you have your fire. You have a couple of fires just dabbed in there. So to me, this is a very winter appropriate palette. I have not even touched this palette. I just received it yesterday and I can't wait to use it. There's definitely going to be a video coming up in this channel with this palette. I'll tag it when it's available. I'm looking forward to playing around with it. So with that, we come to the end, but I do want to show you a bonus palette. My favorite Christmassy palette of all times, and that is Naughty palette from BH Cosmetics. This palette came out winter of 2020 for Christmas that year. It is honestly one of the best quality palettes that I've ever used. This palette has been very well loved, but the pans are so huge it doesn't even look like they've been dented. I just love these colors, and BH Cosmetics' quality, at least back then. I haven't used their stuff recently, but back then their quality was great. I don't think this palette is available anymore, but I had to say that this palette is such a beloved palette, so I definitely wanted to talk about it. Another thing that I really like about this palette is that the names are so cutely Christmas themed. You have Cole that's black, you have Rudolph that's red, you have Mold that is brown, you have Snowy Day that is white, or Hot Cocoa that is brown. It's just very cutely named. I love this palette. Another thing that I liked about this palette was that the colors were so versatile. I could use it outside of Christmas, because a lot of Christmassy palettes, as you saw, I don't have a lot, are very Christmas colored. You know, they're just greens and reds and maybe a silver or white. For example, the one from Give Me Glow, I contemplated purchasing that, and then I thought this palette screams Christmas. I can't literally wear it any other time of the year, which is part of the reason why I don't have a lot of Christmassy palettes. Let me know what your thoughts are on Christmassy palettes. I haven't seen a lot of Christmassy palettes come out this year, but I have seen Christmas themed and Christmas colors in single bundles. I know Davina came out with one recently, and Sydney Grace came out with another one recently, and I talked about them in my to buy or not to buy video. They're both available right now. I think the Davina one is even on sale. I'll tag that video here for you so that you can go watch it in your time. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you want to figure out what to wear during winter, or if you just wanted to watch it for entertainment, write down to me below what wintry palettes you have that I didn't talk about. Maybe I'm missing out on something, so I should know. Thanks so much for being here with me. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. I love you all as always, and until next time. Bye.